for a higher GC News. Mima Obibia Aquaba. Latest hot. And kwa Aremeyaw bro. Now sana something in a bebaro. So we subscribe ya. Bomodi say over subscribe. Now while I give video don't give us a thumbs up. Not fee. Share na wo fufrosu na we be here na wo en semwa ekoso e wo Ghana memo hanom afi yehwe eye en semwa abeto yepono so yenti eye samkomu eye sansemo ya ba beto ya moma yenti dia ekoso yenti nzemo
Sinners, he want to find out. We are ending the year.
Yeah.
What is your assessment of the majority in parliament?
Well, they have done what they could in the circumstances. If I say so, I want to imply that once you get people elected to parliament, it is our duty as leaders of the party to quickly take them through strong orientation.
Okay. Yeah.
We in leadership have not done that. So in a sense, we have failed them.
Okay.
But it is not something that we intentionally did. You know, we're struggling to get our government formed within the 100 days that we promised, and we went through these difficulties of having plane crashes here and there, and many other challenges. And so it has not been possible for us to take the new ones through orientation. And so there may be, so I am disappointed that with this huge majority, at times we find it difficult to get numbers to match NPP.
That's true.
And it is something that we have to work on very strongly. I'm impressed about the performance of our leaders on the floor.
Okay.
But what we need to maybe work on is maybe to be able to mobilize the members at whatever time they are needed in the house. So that is the area, because we are dealing with new leadership also. So you need to help them manage the mobilization very well, so that at any point in time we need them, we'll get them. And also, I think there are a few things that we could have done better. For instance, there is this, the move to introduce and push private members
bill.
Law.
You
know, the history of lawmaking in this country has been that it is always very difficult to get a private members bill passed into law. The reason is that we inherited the British system, where there is a clause in our constitution which says that any law or anything in a law introduced in parliament that has financial implications must be introduced by the government in power. So any bill, private members bill, anybody wanted to introduce, they can read into it some financial implications.
Very true.
So that used to be something that had blocked private members' motion. It was Speaker Michael Quay's time that they managed to get over that, and even that at all, we don't have too many successful private members bill. So if our side decided to move a private members bill, or even if the two sides decided to do a private members bill, it means that it comes with implications. So maybe the first thing would have been our members on the floor,
right,
or the leadership, can bounce it off the political committee, so that we all get a buy-in that it is something that we want to be done. Because once it is led by our leaders, whatever the implications are, the party cannot run away from it. So our political committee is chaired by His Excellency the President, and then the leadership of the party are there. And so leadership of our parliamentary caucus are also represented, and the national executive, we are all represented, plus other members of the Council of Elders and very experienced and knowledgeable people. That's why we call it political committee. So this is a committee that ought to be engaged on decisions like this. So once we get the full backing, then our leadership will now go with the confidence that whatever they are doing has the backing of the party. I didn't see that happening. And then, but that said, once the process had started, and it has gone through some preliminary parliamentary processes, it means that the bill has now become the property of Parliament. And even those who are introducing it, they cannot on their own free will even go to withdraw it. They can withdraw it only through by the leave of Parliament. So if Parliament decide you want to withdraw, and you go there and ask Mr. Speaker that you want to withdraw, and the Parliament decides that no, we want it to proceed, then you who introduce it, your hands will be tied theoretically. But that is not to say that it cannot be withdrawn. Because even if at any stage, if we had met and decided that, well, this thing does not serve the interests of our government and our party, who form the majority in the House, that will have to give the leave for the withdrawal. Is it not NDC?
That's right. That's right.
So if we call our members and say that this thing will be moved, when it is moved, all of you accept that it should be withdrawn, then it wouldn't generate any controversy. Because that engagement too had not taken place. That was why the president's advice was taken out of context, and it was made to look like the president was challenging Parliament and so on.
I felt the same.
So our friends, why would you feel the same?
Because honestly, how I also felt.
That NDC is NDC.
But the president is the president.
The president is the leader of the party, NDC. So he's also the leader of our members of Parliament.
That's very interesting. Right?
He's also the leader of our members of Parliament.
So he acted in the capacity as the president or the leader of the members in Parliament?
I don't know, but whatever the case is, he's our leader.
Right.
You understand?
I get you.
He's our leader. So if NPP was complaining, they were, I don't know why they were complaining, that a president who suggests that he doesn't want, in his opinion, this thing
shouldn't happen,
it shouldn't happen. Then you get up and say, President is dictating to Parliament.
Right. Right.
If the president decides to dictate to Parliament, it will be worse than this.
Right.
Because every party in the parliamentary system, we have something called the whip system.
Sure.
Okay, that whip system, that is the reason why we have a whip, minority whip, majority whip. So whatever is going to be discussed in parliament, is the party feels so strongly that it must go in a certain direction because of our manifesto commitments.
Sure. Very well.
Then you just tell them that, look, this is the party line. And some people misconstrue the whip system as dictatorship. It's not dictatorship. We have gone into elections marketing a certain program. Okay. So when we're marketing that program together with our MPs, were we deceiving Ghanaians?
Okay.
We're not.
Yeah.
And so if Ghanaians have bought into that program, it has to be implemented.
Sure.
So if a section of it has to be led, the implementation has to be led by our members of parliament.
Yeah.
And you tell them that we have committed ourselves to doing this thing. So this is the way you have to play. They have to play it because the promise was done by all of us, including our members of parliament.
Yeah. And they are not there as independent candidates.
They are not independent candidates.
Yeah.
They are there on the party's ticket. And if the party has committed that we would be appointing 60 ministers, and somebody from our party or somebody from NPP comes to move a motion that no, 60 ministers is too small a number, we must have 100 ministers. Should I sit there as national chairman to say that, look, they are independent, they should go and vote the way they like, to change it, to compel us to appoint 100 ministers? You go and then remind your leadership in parliament that, look, this is our manifesto, this was what we committed ourselves into doing. So everybody must toe the line and let's get it done. You know, so the whip system in parliament, we have 1 line whip, 2 line whip, and 3 line whip. When it is 3 line whip, it rocks the foundation of your core principles and promises as a party going into elections. So that one, we have all promised Ghanaians that this is what we are going to do. So if we have to remain credible, we have to do it. And we must do it together. Okay, so you just send signal to your
leadership that no, you are going contrary to affect us very well.
But beyond that 3 line whip, there are others where it is rarely used. Because you don't want to use 3 line whip to stifle debate in parliament and so on. And there are times where specific constituency interests coincide with the general party interest. So you allow the representative of that constituency to ventilate the challenges of his constituency. That's all. That's allowed.
That's right. Still on parliament. This one says, what is chairman's assessment of the minorities' performance so far?
Well, I think that minority as a whole, I've heard some very interesting and sensible debates coming from the minority side. Some of their positions, I've admired some of their positions, but there are other positions, with all due respect, that doesn't make sense at all to me.
You know some of them? You want to share some of them with us?
No. And so, and the general conduct, I mean, there are things they do. If I was their party leader, I'll condemn.
Okay.
I will not allow them today, because you see, in minority,
yeah,
what you want to do is to try and win the population to your side.
yeah,
Okay. So you must appear, you must have some minimum credibility by the way you conduct business. But if you are seen to be doing things that are not serving any purpose,
sure,
apart from being of nuisance value, then you lose that credibility. And if you lose that credibility, it will be difficult for you to get the population behind you. If you don't get the population behind you, how do you win elections?
elections, yeah.
I don't want to go further because I don't want them to win the next election.
but talking about they not winning the next election, there's this question that also came. It says that, can you please ask Chairman General about his expectations from the NPP's flag bearership contest?
My expectations?
Yes. What do you expect?
I don't want to expect anything. If you are asking me as acting national chairman for NPP, then it's a different story. But if you are asking me out there,
now, but how are you combining it? Now being an acting national chairman for NPP,
yes,
and being the chairman for NDC. How are you able to combine these two?
In fact, I'm going to add the UP because because people from Wenchi have we have shares in that tradition.
But Chairman, there are a lot of people talking about how, of course, there seems to be a vacuum when it comes to leadership, internal leadership in the NPP. Now, people are also talking about how they are even conducting themselves in terms of having first the flag bearership race before coming all the way down. Do you think it is the best approach? I mean, speaking not necessarily as an NDC, but speaking as an institution when it comes to Ghana's politics.
Well, I raised concerns about it even before it was formally adopted, when they were debating it.
Right.
I raised certain concerns. Maybe they amended their ways in order to address some of the concerns I raised.
Right.
Because the first concern was about mandate.
Sure.
I raised the issue of mandate because if you have branches which were elected at a certain point in time before you elected constituency executives, and then came to regional and came to national before you did the presidential primaries.
Yes.
And you are now going to skip everything and begin at the presidential primaries before you come down.
Yes.
The delegates, some of whom are your party executives at various levels, if their tenure had ended, and instead of starting to renew their mandate from there,
yeah,
and you ask them to go and vote for the presidential candidate, then the branches are voting without mandate.
That's true.
So who are they representing when they choose a presidential candidate? I raised that issue, that it is dangerous. Somebody could take them to court. So when they attended their national meeting, somehow they came and fixed a date which will still make the mandate of their branches unexpired.
Unexpired, that's true. Yeah.
But it still has not cured the
Fundamental challenge.
the fundamental challenge, because immediately after voting for their presidential candidate, their mandate will expire. So if you have somebody who is who has 1 month
Yeah.
to live, and you want the person to select a candidate who will be marketed by new people
Sure.
who had no hand in selecting that candidate.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody has made a choice and you are compelled to now go and market that choice.
That choice, yeah.
It's difficult.
That's true.
And again, it can lead to purging of the party.
Okay.
And the purging can also lead to people defecting from the party en masse.
Okay.
You see, if you realize, there are times when, as a general secretary,
Yeah.
I try to combine parliamentary and presidential primaries.
Exactly. Yeah.
The logic is that
Yeah.
it is not every member of parliament who will be towing the same line. In fact, if all of them tow the same line, it's dangerous for the party.
Sure.
You must allow them to, take their own positions and not to be compelled. But if you choose the presidential candidate before coming to think about the parliamentary candidate, a presidential candidate who is very dictatorial
Yeah.
can send signals that anybody who did not support my bid as a presidential candidate should not be given the opportunity to become a member of parliament. I can't work with them.
That's
and
true.
we saw it during Nanado's time.
Yeah. He
And-
said it
and
so
that is-
boldly. Yeah.
That is part of the challenges they are dealing with now.
Sure.
Okay, if at that time they had stood up and faced the issues, maybe they could have stopped him in his tracks.
All right.
But they all behaved cowardly and allowed the problem to fester.
Yeah.
And they are now reaping the results. But the one who created it is no longer a president. He's sitting somewhere in retirement. He may choose to to comment or not to comment.
That is true.
You understand?
That is very true. Yeah.
So it can lead to purging, where in many of our past elections when I was general secretary, I pushed for presidential and parliamentary to be done at the same time.
Okay.
So that the one who will win will not have the opportunity of weeding out the supporters of his opponent.
Right.
You see, so
I get it.
so you can contain everybody.
Everybody, yeah. Yeah.
And if you start from the branch, you get your branches intact with the supporters of everybody, constituency,
Yes.
regional, and even national, before you go and do presidential primaries,
yeah.
for you to determine who the winner will be. So by the time you get the presidential candidate, the supporters of all the other contestants would have been in the party already, and you can't sack them.
Sure.
So all you need to do is to consolidate the party and prepare for elections.
Right.
So that is one big challenge they are likely to face.
Very well. Very well. Chairman, the program is becoming so exciting. Let me be quick with the questions. So I'll read about 2-3 questions at the same time. So this one, it revolves around the Constitutional Review Commission's work. What is General's view of the work of the Constitutional Review Commission? Then this one says, what does he agree to the presidential tenure being moved to 5 years? This one also says, how feasible is it to have EC and their deputies' tenure being limited to 10 years? And then this one says that, will it help our governance to have persons with dual citizens to be allowed to contest in parliamentary elections? And then finally, on the constitutional review, this one says, does chairman support the calls for constitutional reforms which allows chiefs to engage in partisan politics? So if we can put this together,
don't know how I can remember all the questions.
I know,
but you see, I support constitutional review.
Yes,
because every law is made for a purpose and to deal with emerging challenges at a certain point in time of the life of a country. So, having operated the constitution for over 30 years, I think that some of the articles and clauses have been tested. Some have proven useful, others have proven challenging. So I think that it is time to review the constitution. And in fact, the review is overdue.
right.
When President Mills started it, we all thought that by now we would have done with it and washed our hands. Unfortunately, the NPP, which promised in before 2000 that their biggest problem was the constitution, and that Ghanaians should vote for them when they immediately they assume power, they will change it. And later, for us to be told by Nanado that it was too early to change the constitution. I was surprised. Nanado has run this country with some contradictions, because some of us have worked with him before, you know, and what he stood for in those days could not be put to practice when he became the president. And so he's my friend, but each time I meet him and he asks me why I'm still attacking him, I tell him I'm disappointed in him because we all followed him at a point in time, knowing that he will, whoever gets the opportunity to become the president will implement what we believed and preached. At that time, I was with him in the People's Movement for Freedom and Justice, that fought military regime. I was with him in the first political party that I joined was United National Convention. He was our general secretary. I was a constituency organizer. And so then, all the things that we have preached, if at least one of us gets the opportunity to become president, we expect that you implement them the same way that we had demanded that earlier regimes, like military regimes and others, we implement them. And so, when we lost in 2016, it was hurting. But I had consolation that, after all, Nana has won. So at least some of the ideas that we believed in and fought for together, at least there will be an opportunity for him to implement them for the betterment of the country. And then that was where he failed me.
It went off.
So,
yes.
First of all, I would have suggested that maybe it is yet to happen. But we still have survivors from the Consultative Assembly, members of the Consultative Assembly. So I had suggested to some of the members that wouldn't it be a good idea if we could put ourselves together to engage the Constitutional Review Commission. So that there are some of the things that we debated and or introduced into the Constitution, which has certain foundations.
Right.
So if we engage, they may be able to appreciate the background to some of the things better. And then we ourselves can look at some of the clauses we put there to deal with the emerging challenges at that time, and to see, to assess whether they are still valid or ought to be changed.
Sure. Sure.
The things that you have been talking about, I don't know whether they have presented their report fully, and we know that this is contained in, or that is contained in, or they are just debating points that people are asking me.
So these specific ones, per some reliable media sources, it looks like today's presentation, they got it from the presentation.
Okay.
Yes, so they got the first one, which says that the tenure should be moved from 4 years to 5 years.
I'm yet to read the report fully.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if there is that change, because even at the Consultative Assembly, the debate between 4 years and 5 years it was a very heated debate, and the outcomes kept changing with every vote. There were the earlier times, we accepted 5 years, it went to a certain stage, we changed and took 4 years, and then it came back and back and forth. So, and having practiced the 4 year thing over the years, I think that it will not offend some of us much if it is moved to 5 years.
Yes, very well.
Because how to calibrate whether you should go 4 years or 5 years or 7 years or whatever is that, see, you may have a good government.
Sure.
If you have good people running the country, then you want those people to remain for much longer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there is no guarantee that you will always have good people. So you may end up with very bad people.
Sure.
And you want them to remain there for maybe only 2 years. So that the country can get the opportunity
to move them out.
So it is these two forces that meet to determine the length of the tenure of a government. You don't want the tenure to be too short so that you cannot get a full benefit from a good government. And you don't want it to be too long so that you suffer the damage that will be caused by a bad government.
Right.
So that is how you fix it. I'm sure at the time, some of the considerations that came was that we had been under unconstitutional rule for quite a considerable number of time. And there was so much pressure from outside that Rollins must go, somebody must come, Rollins must go, somebody must come. So maybe you don't want to make the term too long such that people may not have the patience to wait for elections to get a new leader. Okay. And so maybe that was what influenced. There was also a third proposition that sought a one-term longer tenure, like say 7 years.
Exactly. I've heard that conversation.
You have it in Chile.
Right.
You go there once and that's all. That too has its drawbacks.
Sure.
If you put somebody there for 7 years and he wants to finish the country, by the time he will finish and then leave, he will be stuck in another country.
That's
and
right.
you will be finding it difficult to bring to bring him back.
Interpol will not be able
to bring him back because from day one he knows that look, this is a rented country I'm operating in. So when I finish, I'll relocate to my proper country and remain there and never come back. You see, so the debate is around those things.
Yes.
Now, when we come to the issue about chiefs' participation,
exactly, very
politics.
important. Yes, very important.
In fact, we, a group led by some of us, we put that in there to bar chiefs from participation.
Okay.
And I still strongly believe that that clause must remain.
Chiefs should not.
No.
Okay.
You see?
And what's the reason?
The reason is simple. We took the history of the country, the constitutional history of the country.
Yes.
We realized that the chiefs have never been barred from participating in politics. So the chiefs were active partisans in the past. Some were CPP, some were UP, and so on and so forth. And we had not developed that democratic culture that allows governments to tolerate people who are against them.
Right.
So in the early stages, anytime there was a change in government, then the next thing is that there must be a change in the occupants of our stools, many of the stools. Okay. So then another government will come,
with his
then he will also come.
Chiefs, yeah.
You know, when the history of this Boko crisis was narrated by Otunfo,
yes,
if you listen to him, you see that it kept changing. When this person comes to power, then they say this is the person I support. If this person comes to power, this is the person. Yeah. So we looked at all these things and said that, look, we are also going, politics is divisive. Sure. Partisan politics is divisive. So if we divide the population, and there is no uniting force that can, bring order in society when society is so polarized, it will be dangerous for the country.
That's right.
So we felt that let us protect chieftaincy. Let chieftaincy play a role of a stabilizing force in our society, a unifying force in our society. Sure. Because every politician, every intellectual is a subject of one stool or the other.
Right.
And so when there is crisis, there is serious disagreement, and the chiefs come together and call the warring factions, they will be able to exert their influence on the politicians, and we can bring order and stability in the society.
Very well. Yeah.
Number two, from practice, you see that chiefs in Achim, chiefs in Bro, Wenchi, and other places, you have a set of CPP chiefs, a set of UP chiefs. And so, when there's a change in government, in Wenchi, where I come from, our chief was deported from the community completely to Western region.
Wow. Interesting.
Because the government he supported had been removed.
Oh.
Yes. In Achim, it happened. In other places, when they are removed, they are humiliated in such a way that in some places, I don't want to mention, you see paramount chiefs who were so powerful a year earlier will be so impoverished that they will be doing many jobs and other things that will just dehumanize them.
Yeah.
Then the third was that we wanted to remove the cause of distance so that no government will be able to remove a chief.
Right.
So we said the chieftaincy institution is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Then chiefs, the selection of an installation of chiefs and queen mothers should be done by their cultural traditions and practices,
Sure.
by the people
Sure.
over whom they will exercise their chieftaincy, and
yeah.
not any outsider,
Okay.
like government in power and so on.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
before the constitution,
Yeah.
we were having the government in power had the right to recognize chiefs, and when they withdraw the recognition, it means the chief has been bestowed.
That's not good.
So we asked ourselves, if I'm installing,
Yeah.
and you know, there will be, the president will come from just one traditional area.
Yeah. Yes.
You see?
Yes.
So, like President Mahama is a Gonja.
Sure.
So what role should he have in installing an Anglo chief?
That's true.
He does not belong to that tribe.
Doesn't even know their culture.
He doesn't know their culture.
Yeah.
But if you left this recognition and lack of withdrawal of recognition there, then the president can direct that we have withdrawn recognition from this chief, and that will be the end.
Yeah.
So we say that if the Gonja people are installing their chief, let the Gonja people install their chief. And once he is installed, let it be published in the official state journal. That is the Gazette.
Gazette, yeah.
So once it is published there, it is noticed to everybody that the person, the people in this community have selected this person as their chief.
That's true.
So government should not go in there. Now, the reverse argument is also that if government cannot remove a chief, what causes or what motivates government to want to remove certain chiefs?
That's true.
Because when I'm campaigning, and then you go and join the party of my opponent,
Yeah.
you campaign against me, and I win. Would I want to leave you there? You see, I want to remove you because you wanted to remove me.
So then I must
so now I have the power. So I want to remove you. So that was the motivation of people in government wanting to remove chiefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a community, our customs and usages require that chiefs must be accorded utmost respect and reverence.
Yeah.
Now, if a chief joins NPP in my constituency, and he's there, NPP chairman, this chief there is NPP chairman, and you are also NDC candidate.
Candidates, yeah.
And the chief is on platform
Campaigning
campaigning, insulting you, and heaping allegations on you. That's and true. All that. It is not our cultural practice that when you are even attacked by a chief, you can also go out there to respond in equal measure.
Exactly.
But these politics, if I leave you, I don't respond. It means that I'm losing the election.
Yes.
So I also be forced to mount platform to also respond.
That's true.
You see?
Yeah.
And that response could be taken as disrespect for the chief who should not be spoken against.
Exactly.
So that also will lower the dignity of our chiefs.
Sure.
So we looked at all these things and said that no. Let the chiefs be protected from partisan leaders of the country. So the chief will remain a chief irrespective of which party is in power. So that they can serve as our traditional leaders and serve as a pillar in our peace architecture and all that.
That's right.
And finally, first we restricted it to paramount chiefs.
Right.
Then later, there was an argument that, well, paramount chiefs don't lead people to do communal labor. It is the smaller chiefs
who do,
who lead the people in the communities.
Yeah.
And they need the loyalty of all the citizens, irrespective of their political affiliations.
Sure.
So if the chief says that this is what this community must do, he must command the respect of everybody to follow him. So it is not at the paramountcy level that this thing is done. So even the smaller chiefs must be included. So we added it. So I still believe that it can be done, even though some chiefs have flouted it. It hasn't created so much problem with us. If we open it, it will be dangerous for the country. So the chiefs, some of the chiefs are saying this thing, is taking their right to contest elections, and nobody is taking your right. They say this is one position. Once you are in there, you can't do the other. If you want to go and do it,
then leave this
one and go and do it.
That's right.
Because we have bad the security, members of security, we have bad judges and all that. Why are they not talking about their right to vote?
Exactly.
Okay. So if you are a judge and you want to do politics, resign and go and do your politics. If you are a soldier, you want to do politics, resign and go and do your politics. But you have a right to choose which work you will do.
Want to do. Yeah.
But the work has rules. So if you want to operate in that area, you go and operate it. You can't go and be selling pork in a mosque.
Thanks for watching. Like and share the video. You can also drop your comment. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell to turn on the notification.